How's it going guys, Kris here with another weapon comparison guide for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. And today we're going to be deep diving into those stats and testing both the M16 and the AUG, putting them side by side and seeing how they stack up next to each other. Both of these guns are tactical rifles with 3-round bursts, capable of laying waste to other players really quickly, but also being limited to that burst fire mode only, meaning they're both going to perform a little bit differently to most of the other fully automatic weapons in the game. The M16 and the AUG might be very similar kind of guns, but they're still going to offer you with their own pros and cons, giving you reasons why you might want to opt for one over the other. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in this video, and hopefully by the end, you'll know a bit more about how they're going to compare and which one is probably going to be better suited to your playstyle. So to start us off, we're going to talk about all those juicy damage stats and see which guns got the most firepower. If we run a close range test shooting at the body, we can see that both guns are going to be able to put the other guy down in a single burst, very quickly and very easily, taking 3 bullets and nothing more. Now because these guns are burst fire only, this makes those longer range tests a little bit trickier to do, so we're going to have to do each rifle individually and slow things down to see what's really going on. Using a long range scope on the M16, if we shoot a few bursts towards our victim, a few bullets seem to hit him in the body. But it's not exactly easy to see how many, with it taking a few pulls of the M16's trigger to put the other guy down on the floor. Slowing things down reveals that 4 bullets actually connect, as we can see our target's health bar drop 4 times, and that's just enough to take him out, meaning that it's often going to take at least 4 bullets to kill someone further away. So basically a few bursts, with quite a few of your shots straying off target as they travel through the air. Running the same test with the AUG is pretty much the same kind of story, as it's also going to kill someone further away in 4 shots, just like the M16. As slowing things down reveals that 4 bullets connect, even though we actually fire off 4 bursts, meaning only 1 bullet per burst actually connected. Not exactly a great result regarding the AUG's accuracy, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Obviously shots over distance are going to be far less consistent, due to them possibly missing or hitting your target in the head, but as a basic understanding, it's often going to take 4 bullets to kill someone at range, so at least 2 bursts at minimum. But speaking of headshots, because the AUG actually deals a little bit more damage than the M16, this allows it to kill in 1 less bullet up close. The AUG can take someone down in 2 bullets to the head, whereas the M16 is going to require all 3 in the burst, unless of course your target's already been weakened. The M16 is going to leave them hanging on to dear life, but they're still going to survive if a shot in the burst misses, giving the AUG a clear advantage. Unless you've chosen to increase the M16's damage with barrel attachments, that is, which just effectively lets it kill in 2 headshots, just like the AUG. Damage wise, the M16 deals a maximum of 50, and the AUG dishes out a maximum of 54, hence why it can kill in just 2 bullets to the head in CQC. Plus if your opponent's already taken a bit of flak first, then the AUG's slightly higher damage values just might finish them off a little bit more reliably. It's also definitely worth pointing out that the AUG can hold on to its 3-shot kill over a further distance, having a longer effective damage range of 30 meters instead of 21.6, like the M16. Because the M16 dishes out just 50 damage per bullet up to 21.6 meters, as soon as your target strays beyond this point, it's going to take an extra shot to put them down, stopping you from killing them in a single burst, unless of course one of those bullets hits them in the face. With all that said though, the M16's got the faster fire rates, with its base speed hitting 909 RPM, rather than 857 RPM. So although it's only marginal, this is just enough to give the M16 a slight edge, which will probably come in handy in shorter ranges where you need to get those shots out ASAP. I guess you could increase the fire rates for both guns if you wanted to through attachments, but with the M16 being capable of going up to 1132 RPM, this clearly gives it a distinct advantage regarding speed. So anyway, swiftly moving over to the accuracy stuff next, where we can find some pretty interesting comparisons. First thing to point out that you'll probably already notice is that the AUG actually comes fitted with its very own built-in optical attachment, giving you a 1.5 times magnification. The M16 doesn't have this, giving you those stock iron sights instead, so already this is a nice little bonus for the AUG, with those built-in optics arguably being a lot clearer and easier to use than the M16's irons. It also means that you might not need to prioritise another optical attachment when using the AUG, like you might with the M16, nicely freeing up an attachment slot for something else. As far as recoil goes, in closer ranges, you're barely going to notice any difference at all between the M16 and the AUG, with them both performing in a very similar way. Bullet groupings are generally quite close together for the 2 guns, making them both very accurate when used within shorter sight lines, where they're pretty much going to be on par with each other. But things start to get a bit more interesting if we put range into the equation, because if we fire some single bursts out with the M16 over distance, that recoil is going to be a lot more noticeable, with your shots mainly straying upwards and deviating slightly horizontally. Running the same test with the AUG gives us some very similar kind of results, but only a bit more pronounced, because the AUG shots are going to be impacted by higher amounts of recoil, forcing those bullet groupings to widen, therefore making it a little bit less precise to use over further distances. By putting both weapons side by side, we can clearly see that the M16's bursts are going to be tighter, with most of the recoil being pushed vertically. Though the AUG on the other hand is also subjected to quite a bit of vertical recoil too, but it also suffers from more horizontal, equating to its bullets spreading out more as they travel through the air, impacting long range precision. But the AUG does have a couple of tricks up its sleeve, because although the M16 is going to have far less horizontal spread, generally making its bursts more accurate, the AUG's recoil is going to seem to reset at a quicker pace, making its first shot more precise when you're firing the gun off quickly and spamming shots, as you can see in this test, with the first bullet pretty much hitting the same spot every time you pull the trigger. Not to mention the fact that the AUG's also got a slightly higher muzzle velocity of 775 meters per second, as opposed to the M16's velocity of 725, letting the AUG's bullets fly 50 meters per second faster through the air, which, combined with that quicker centering speed, gives it a really precise first shot. So maybe the AUG's accuracy isn't quite as terrible as it might seem after all, because yeah, its bursts are generally less accurate than the M16's, but the M16's going to struggle to center when firing lots of bursts out quickly, forcing it to drift upwards more so after every burst, therefore exaggerating that vertical recoil, especially if you've chosen to speed up its fire rate too, which is only going to make matters worse. So basically speaking, the AUG's first shot is typically going to be more accurate than the M16's when you're firing lots of bursts out quickly, but the bullets after the first shot are going to be more spread out, making them less likely to hit someone who's far away. Because of this, the AUG might seem better suited for barrels that increase fire rate rather than the M16, with it being able to get back on target quicker in between bursts, letting you utilise that added speed. But obviously, the AUG's also going to benefit from having an attachment to reduce its horizontal spread too, with that being quite high. Something like the front grip or field agent foregrip that'll reduce those higher recoil values and help to tighten up its spread a bit, often allowing it to land more shots on target over further distances, helping to cut down those kill times. The M16 on the other hand might favour something to lower its vertical recoil a bit, like say the muzzle brake or infantry compensator, putting less emphasis on that upwards drifting, therefore helping its accuracy when you're firing lots of bursts out in quick succession. So next we're going to run a few mobility tests, starting off with those reloads. In-game stats tell us that both guns have the same reload quickness of 2.7 seconds, but lo and behold, they're both actually different. The M16 is going to perform tactical reloads a bit quicker than the AUG, and because you're probably going to be relying on those tactical reloads quite a lot as you play, this is kind of a big deal, giving the M16 the upper hand. Empty reloads are a little bit trickier to test, because you've got to shoot off a burst first in order to perform it, and with both guns firing at different speeds, this does complicate things slightly. But generally we can see that the AUG is still going to be slightly slower than the M16, though there isn't quite as much in it as the last test, still giving the M16 the upper hand regarding overall mobility and ammo management, with the two rifles both having the same standard mag size of 30 rounds. Because of this, I guess the AUG will be a tad better suited to attachments that speed up its reloads, at least when you compare it to the M16. But with both guns being burst fire rifles, this generally makes their shots a little bit easier to manage, so unless you have a tendency to spam fire a lot, reloads probably aren't going to seem like a massive problem for either of the guns in most situations. One last thing to point out regarding mobility. Although both guns have the same aim down sights time, the M16 does happen to have a slightly quicker shooting move speed of 677 miles per hour, as opposed to the AUG speed of 626 miles per hour. So this is just another thing that might make the M16 feel a tad more manoeuvrable, possibly allowing it to excel when you need to strafe around and skip from target to target. So anyway, as a quick summary, both guns have the potential to be brutal, and they can both shred targets up in one burst within shorter ranges. The M16 and the AUG are generally very similar, but there's definitely a few things to separate their performance, with the M16 generally being the faster shooting gun, and the AUG trading a bit of that speed for power, allowing it to kill easier with shots to the head, slightly extend its 3-shot kill range, and finish weakened players off a tad more reliably. I suppose in a close quarter gunfight, this might give either of the guns an edge, depending on where your shots land. But it's at range where differences start to get a bit more obvious. Not so much with the bullets needed to kill, but with the recoil patterns and accuracy stats, forcing more shots off target. The M16's got a much tighter spread than the AUG, possibly allowing more shots to land on target over distance, but the AUG might be better suited when spamming shots, due to the first shot in the 3-round burst seeming to go where you want it to more reliably. So in a way, although the M16's got the distinct accuracy advantage from a statistical level, the AUG can still feel somewhat useful over range too, with its higher bullet speed, even if it's only the first shot in the burst that's going to be precise. The M16 generally has the better mobility stats, meaning you might not need to prioritise magazine attachments with it having quicker reloads, but the AUG practically gives you an attachment for free, with it coming with some built-in optics, possibly freeing up a slot for something else instead. So there's plenty of reasons why you might want to opt for one gun over the other, weighing up both weapons' pros and cons. So that's pretty much it for this one, folks. Hope you enjoyed the guide and learned a few things. Thumbs up if you did, and make sure you subscribe to see more content coming up in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in our next episode.